Greetings and welcome to another fun episode of Photoshop Party. Today's Tuesday, Valentine's Day, February 14th. So hopefully everybody's going to have a good time today and fall in love with everything I teach you, and we'll make it a great Valentine's Day. So today we're going to talk about Camera Raw, or Adobe Camera Raw, and also if you're using Lightroom and Adobe Camera Raw are basically the same engine for processing your images. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen real quick and we'll go to Photoshop. And hopefully you can see Photoshop there. And let me minimize all the people over here. Get rid of them. Get rid of that. And June 4th through the 9th, the wonderful West Coast School will be back in progress again. University of San Diego in San Diego. Photoshop 0 to 60 in a week. You're going to have a great time. We're going to teach you all kinds of good stuff. Technically, it's a basic Photoshop class, but it's more like basic and intermediate because some of the stuff we do is pushing on advanced. So we're going to have a good time. We're going to teach a whole lot to you, and we're going to have fun. That's all that matters. So, okay, let's go back to here. Come on. Close that down. Don't save. And right now, I'm just going to show you the Camera Raw filter. So what I'm going to do is Command-Shift-A or Control-Shift-A is a shortcut, or you can go up to Filter, down to Camera Raw Filter. I'm going to increase the exposure so you can see it a little bit. And one of the new things in Camera Raw and Lightroom, and I think Kimberly talked about this before, was select subject, select sky, select background, all that good stuff. So I'm going to select subject, and I've got a whole bunch of subjects there. And it should get into facial recognition.
Is that AI now, the facial recognition?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's only showing subject 1.
Michael, with the subject, it doesn't usually separate the people, at least in Lightroom.
Okay. It did it before, so that's why I was going to show it. But...
Of course, when you weren't sharing.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, well, so much for showing that. So let's go ahead and delete the mask.
Oh, yeah,
There we
people
go.
at the bottom. Yep.
There we go. Now it's selecting the people. And you can see that it's doing facial recognition, so you can pick out the faces that you want. They're not in any particular order, which is weird, but that's how it is. So, oh well.
Did it just pop up by itself, Michael? Or did you do something to bring it up?
It popped up by itself.
Okay,
It takes a little bit for it to use the AI to find it. So that's why it's not there initially.
Yeah, when you got so many people, it takes a while. Had it been just one person or two people, it would have popped up a lot quicker. Let's click on him. And you can see now, when I clicked on his, you can do the face skin, the body skin, which there's not much body. There's pick up his neck. You got eyebrows, the eye sclera, the pupil and iris, lips, and hair. Well, let's change people's. Cancel him. Let's do somebody. Let's do her. She's got hair. We'll do face skin, and we'll do hair.
What's eye sclera?
The whites around the eye.
Okay.
And if we increase the exposure on her, now we can make her just really crazily pop. Bring her temperature down, give her blue man group. There we go. We should probably add her neck in there too. So I'd have to go backwards to get her neck in there too, but you can see now that it selected her ears and her face and her hair, because that's what we selected.
Mike, I think if you did the add and the people, then you get that option again, the select people
There's
part.
people, okay. So go back to her again, and we'll take her neck. Oh, that's body skin, okay. Create, and do the same thing, and it did it for us. But it didn't do a great selection around there, around her chest area, so. It still needs a little bit of work, but the AI is coming along unbelievably well.
Can you use the brush to refine that mask?
I could add with the brush and add it in there without a problem. So let's go ahead and we're going to open this image first and play with this a little bit. This is kind of sort of where I got my frostbite at. It was kind of cold out there. The wind was blowing slightly. And what I want to do is
There's no
reset.
photograph.
What's that?
I don't see any photograph. It's all black screen.
Oh, that's because, let's go ahead and stop sharing. We'll do desktop instead. What it's doing is I just had it set to Photoshop. So share screen. Let's do desktop. Now you can see it.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you for telling me that. So in Camera Raw, this has already been processed a little bit. So I'm just going to go to more image settings, reset to default, and start all over. This is how it came out in camera. And you can see there's a buffalo under the tree that's very badly exposed. First thing I'm going to do is what I always do is go to auto and click on auto. And it gives me a starting point. It's not always perfect. And it was set at -15 right there. All I have to do is double click on the up arrow where exposure is, and it takes it back to 0. So any of these settings, if I double click on them, it'll take them back to 0. I'm going to bring up the saturation just a little bit, bring that sky up a little bit, and maybe a little bit of vibrance as well. And then I want to bring the color down a little bit on the snow. But before I do, under auto at the top, you have profile, Adobe color, landscape, portrait, standard, and vivid. And I'm going to click on browse underneath there. And what I can do is click on each one to see which one works the best, or just drag my mouse over them. And personally, I like vivid the best. So I'm going to click on vivid. And then go back to my settings here. White balance. Let's see what I can do with the snow. That's not bad. It's nice and warm, so I'll take that. And then optics. I always go to optics next. Click on remove chromatic aberration, which is the red and green lines that go around things when you zoom in really tight. And then use profile corrections, which basically takes the lens that I was using and makes it so it's a perfect match for what Photoshop wants. If you're using a wide angle lens, it's going to distort and give you that bubble feeling. When you click on use profile corrections, it's going to bring it back to normal. So that's one of the things I have to do. If I wanted to add, I've taken out a few things on here. So let's go ahead and right click, edit panels to show. And what I did is I right clicked next to basic, or any of these would work. So right click next to basic, edit panels to show. These are the panels that I'm using all the time. I don't use the curve. I don't use color grading, effects, or calibration. Most of the time I don't use detail, which is sharpening, etc., but I'm going to leave it in there for now. If you want to change it, what you do is you click on, say, optics, and you push the up or down arrow to put it where you want it. Being that I use basic, then optics, I always put optics underneath basic. Then you got color, and then the color mixer there, and geometry that I use all the time. So click OK. And now I have these 4. I can also tell it I want it compact, which makes it a little bit skinnier there, which I don't care about. I just like normal. And then I do single panel mode. So when I have one open, if I open another one, it closes that one. So I only have one open. If I didn't do that, use multi-panel mode, I could open basic, open optics, then I got to zoom down to geometry, get down here, have it straighten out my image for me. But for me, I like single panel so I know which one I'm working in. It's just simple for me. I'm a simple person, so it works well. With color mixer, what you can do is affect the saturation. So what I could do, I want to affect the orange in the sky right there. So I click on saturation, and next to where it says HSL, the drop down here, I click on the bullseye tool or the eyedropper. And if I want to add saturation, I drag up, and you can see my saturation changing a little bit in the sky. Or you can slide it left to right, right to left to do the same thing. And it picks just that color. So if I wanted to do the snow, bring the snow down a little bit. And then go to luminance, which is the brightness value. I could lighten it or darken it, whatever I want to do. Geometry, I'm not going to mess with on this one. However, I am going to go into my masking tool, and I'm going to say select subject. So I click on select subject, and it selects the tree, and it selects the bison, not a buffalo, it's a bison. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit with Command Plus. I don't want the tree to get too much brighter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit subtract, and I'm going to use the brush, and I'm going to subtract the tree out just by painting on the tree. And as I get away from the bison, I can get a bigger brush. Now I only have one thing selected. That's my bison. So I'm going to hit Z for zoom and hold it in, and then hold my space bar to drag it around. Now I can mess with him only. So I'm going to bring the exposure up just a little bit, bring my shadows up. I think I'll bring the blacks and the whites up a little bit, highlights, and a little bit of contrast. And I'm also going to bring the color temperature up on him, bring it to a little bit warmer so that he kind of matches the sky bouncing off of him. This is all done in Camera Raw, super easy to do. And if you're not totally satisfied with it, let's go ahead and do a little bit more. I don't want them glowing, but I do want them there. And what I could do is add with the brush, and you can see that just didn't work. So I'm not going to do that. And then I hit open. Let me get this out of the way. Click on open, 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 open.
Now that's creating its own mask every time that you,
Yeah, so next time I go into Camera Raw with this image, it's already masked, it's already set, and I could
Okay.
change it again later if I wanted to.
okay.
And just for fun, let's go into filter, Camera Raw filter. We'll go back into mask again, hit brush. We're gonna brush this guy right here. And what I can do is hit auto mask right there. And so let's go back to brush, auto mask. So when I hit the edges, it keeps me coloring within the lines. And so bring the exposure up just a touch, a little bit of warmth in the temperature to go with the sky. Bring the shadows up a little bit, not too much, just enough so it's there. And click OK. So you have before and after. And we'll go to filter. This is not raw. This is just something different. Skylum software Luminar 4. I just like playing with this filter on this image. And a couple of questions in the chat while we're waiting for Luminar to kick in. Where does Photoshop save the adjustments? And basically it's a sidecar to the raw file. And it's non-destructive, like Jason says. Cool. And here we can pick out, like this one warms up everything, including the snow. Dramatic, too dramatic for me. Black and white, no. Dennis likes black and white. I'm going to go with warm sunset, even though this is a sunrise. Drop it in, and everybody's going to be happy. And we wait and wait and wait and wait and wait and wait, and it's not showing up anything. Okay, fine. Never mind. I didn't want to show you that anyway. Don't save. Back to bridge. Nobody has ever seen one of these before, right? It's a passport color checker. And basically what it does, it takes the temperature of the lights that you have. If you're using studio lights, you can set the color back to normal if they're off color. If you're outdoors, you can use this so that you can get your color correct every single image. So the fastest way to use this is when you go to basic, where you go to white balance, you have an eyedropper tool right next to white balance where it says add shot. So I just click on that and I click on the white one. And I don't know if it's very subtle, but I don't know if you could see the change. But if you watch the temperature and the tint, it's at -1 and 5650. Now it's -14 and 5650. And if you want to really screw it up, click on the green or the other colors in here, and it screws it up really bad. But this is a correct color temperature for that particular image. So Okay, where was I? Close. And then here's the shot I took for real. And I didn't have a color checker in this image, but I want to kind of balance it out a little bit. So what I'll do is I will find the white spot right here on the, I don't know if that's onion or radish or what it is on the pizza, but I'll go to the eyedropper, click on the white part, and you can see that it changed colors from -1 on tint and 5650 to -8 and 5250 on the color. When you're using Camera Raw and you decide, oh, I didn't like what I did, what you can do is go down to the cancel button down here and hold the Option or Alt key, and that will hit reset. You just click on reset and start over for what you want to do. But I like what I did, so there we go. I want to kind of play with the colors a little bit, so I'm going to go to Optics, number 1, remove chromatic aberration, do all that stuff, go back to basic and hit auto. And it kind of does a jumble of shadows and highlights and contrast. I want a little bit more contrast just for fun. Texture I'm going to bring up a little bit, clarity I'm going to bring up a little bit, and what that does is just makes it just a touch sharper. Dehaze will, if you have a hazy image like you're shooting in the clouds or something, that's good to use because you can use it and it brings down the tonal range. I'm going to keep it at 0 for now because I don't use it on these. Then I'm going to go to color mixer. With color mixer, I'm going to click on saturation. I'm going to click on my eyedropper tool there, and I'm going to drag upwards for my greens. I want a little bit greener. And then with my reds, I'm going to want them to pop a little bit more saturation in the reds. I think I'll just drop the yellows down a little bit because it interferes with the reds and the greens.
Yeah, so it doesn't, it just centralizes itself on just one particular thing for the color correction, but I mean, for reds, it doesn't do it as a group where it takes all the reds and one time, or you have
It
to
will
do
take, it takes all the reds in your image. So if I took this red over here on the right and I drag it down on the saturation, it
Okay,
takes all the reds down.
okay,
You can select that. Wow, I took it way down, didn't I?
mhm,
You can select that particular one, making a selection and mask it and do the color on that. Or you can do overall reds. So it's all up to you how you want to do it.
okay.
And here's where I would probably bring back the detail. So I'll click on detail, bring it back in. Click OK. Now we have detail. You can do some sharpening here. You can do some noise reduction here, and you can do even more. Clicking on the down arrows next to sharpening, select your radius, select your masking. If you hold your Option or Alt key, you can see what you're doing there. For me, I don't use sharpening in RAW hardly at all. So what I'll do is go ahead and click open. The question is, what's the advantage over Lightroom or Camera Raw? There's no advantage on either one. I just like this. I use Bridge instead of Lightroom for my image sorting. Some people definitely like, whoa. Some people like Camera Raw, some people like Lightroom. It's just preference. I happen to like Bridge and it works for me. I'm going to go to Filter, Topaz Labs, Sharpen AI. And this is going to take a while because it is a full-size, full-res image. So if you have questions, go ahead and shout them out while we're waiting for Sharpen AI to work.
This is Suzanne. When you use the color checker and you put it on the lowest white, that wasn't 18% gray, was it?
No, that was just white.
I usually use 18% gray. Is there a rule on like?
No
which-
rule. It's
Oh.
just what you prefer.
Okay.
And for me, I prefer just to, that works for me for my color settings and how I like to process my images.
Okay. Also, what is that white piece that's in the middle of your pizza?
I'm thinking that that is, we're talking
Radish.
about this right here.
It's a
Yeah.
radish. It's a radish.
It looks like a radish or a mushroom. I can't tell. I was shooting this pizza for a pizza company and I was just playing around getting a weird angle on it. And
Looks a lot like a red onion too, because the bottom part has some purple to it.
Oh, yeah.
it could be almost anything, I think. I don't know.
Clamshell.
Look like fish.
Yeah, you never know.
Looks
Might
like
be a-
octopus to me.
A slice of a scallop. It wasn't much of a sharpen that AI did this time. It did just enough. I used the minimal sharpening that's needed to sharpen things up a little bit. You can see that this is like crystal clear sharp. I kind of like having good detail in there. So any questions on AI? Like AI Sharpen or RAW so far? Any other questions? Going once, going twice?
Michael, can I ask a question,
No?
please?
Okay, now that you said please, I'll take your question.
Okay, so I'm going from Photoshop into Camera Raw, and I'm not sure exactly, should I be making a copy of my background,
Or make it a smart object.
or do I make it a smart object, or what do I do with that image before I do all the adjustments in Camera Raw?
Okay. When you bring it up in Camera Raw, if you're not using the Camera Raw filter, Camera Raw will save it. Let me go back to Bridge. All the changes I made are now back in Bridge. So all the sharpening and everything I did, I can right click on there and go to develop settings and go to clear settings or Camera Raw defaults. Either one's going to take it back to beginning. It's not a permanent change. So if I decided, you know what, I want to make some other changes to it, I'll double click on that again to bring it up. And I'll go to say basic, and I'll go to saturation, do a really funky saturation on it, open it. I said open it. Open, 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 open.
If I'm working from Photoshop into Camera Raw,
Mhm.
do I go to just to history, and where it has that I went into Camera Raw in order to get back into it? I'm not
You
sure.
have to go to the original Camera Raw file to access it again. I'm doing all mine from Bridge. So if I close this guy, and I'll close this guy too, just to close it, don't save, go back to Bridge, and you see that it made it now the desaturated version. So I'll just double click to open it back up again, and I'll bring my saturation up, double click on the little arrow there to bring it back up to where I had it before.
Hmm.
So it's basically non-destructible. You're not you're not hurting the file. If you want to oversaturate it, you can do that as well, or bring it back to ground zero again.
I just don't know how to get to that if I don't use Bridge,
Okay, do you use Lightroom or do you use
Photoshop,
okay, so let's
Photoshop.
cancel the changes I made to this, and I will go to Photoshop. We'll go to Open, or Command or Control O, and let me see which pizza file that is. It's this one, number 2, I think. Let me find out what file it is. 39. Okay. So I'll go to 39, which is this file here. And I'm going to open it in Photoshop. I just click on Open. And it brings up the Camera Raw version that we last did. So we'll change the saturation back to 0. And I'll go back to hit cancel, yes. Go back to Photoshop file, open. And you see right next to this file, which is the file I'm working on, you also have the XMP file, which is right next door. And basically that's a teeny tiny file that holds your settings for RAW. So wherever you take that image, that file is going to go with.
Could you just open up your pizza and start from the beginning? Open it in Photoshop and start from the beginning in RAW, because I'm just not understanding where that RAW goes.
Okay, the RAW goes right next door. You see the PS file right there, where my
Yeah,
cursor
but
is.
I don't see that in my. I'm sorry.
The XMP file that's right next door is the one that tells me what changes have been made.
How do you get to see that file?
You have to tell it that you want to show it.
By default, that's a hidden file.
Yeah, you have to go into your preferences and say, I want to see the hidden files as well.
Oh, okay.
So that's how you would see that. So if I decided, you know what, I just need to start all over with this critter, reset to default, and that's the original file as we started with.
Michael, can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it possible to put Topaz on another disk? In other words, could you put it on my C drive is getting so full, it's starting to get clogged up. And I want to install a full suite of Topaz, but I think it's going to squish it all up. Is it possible when you're doing the installation that you could put it somewhere else than on the drive, the C drive?
I believe you can put it anywhere that you want, just so your computer recognizes where to go to get it.
So it would know to draw it from there.
It should, yes.
Okay.
What you can do is contact support at Topaz and say, hey, this is what I want to do. My C drive is full. Can I put it on an external hard drive or something like that to make it happen?
Okay.
And they should be able to walk you through how to do that without a problem.
Okay.
And Topaz,
Tell them I'd like to buy some, get his phone number and everything. I heard they were selling for $1 a brick or something like that.
Okay.
Tell them, thank you so much for getting back.
Yeah.
And tell them, you know
Go ahead,
what?
Anthony,
They're
go
doing
ahead
a hell of a
and
job.
mute yourself. I lost where I was going with that. Okay.
Michael, can I help her out maybe with a question on Photoshop?
Yes, sir.
You know, if you look at the Camera Raw,
Hang on a second.
if you look at the Camera Raw filter in Photoshop, similar to any other filter that you would use in Photoshop, whether you use Topaz or you used a built-in filter or whatever, once you use that filter on that particular layer, then that change is going to take place and you're not really going to be able to go back and change it. So if you go back to the Camera Raw filter a second time it's going to start back from default, and you're going to be adjusting based on what that layer is showing. Without getting too complicated about it, those that really want to use it well might want to look into using it as a smart object. That's one reason I use, frankly, Bridge and Camera Raw more often than I do Photoshop, because I can go back and forth and readjust as a smart object my filters, including my Camera Raw filter. So there's some things today where Camera Raw, not too many years ago, 90% of my editing was in Photoshop and 10% was in Camera Raw. Today, it's about the reverse. About 90% of my editing is in Camera Raw, not in Photoshop. And I use smart objects a lot because I can go back and forth and do adjustments. But essentially, just look at that Camera Raw filter in the same way that you would look at using any other filter. If you want to make a change and don't want to screw up your original layer, duplicate your layer, make that change in Camera Raw filter, come back, and then make your decision on which layer or blend the layers or whatever you might want to do. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay.
This is Suzanne Hutch. Does that really, by using all those smart filters, does that really, really, really increase your file size?
Yeah, sure. No question
Definitely.
about it.
Yeah.
That's why, I tend to perhaps flatten or merge layers or rasterize layers as I go along, because there's a point where oftentimes I've got a lot of smart objects working, and the file starts getting pretty big. There's a few other little issues with which I don't think Michael wants me to get too far into this, where smart objects can kind of screw you up in Photoshop. So I want to be careful I don't get too deep on it here, but
You can,
I would love to hear that.
maybe we'll talk about smart objects in a couple weeks.
Great idea.
Because you can definitely end up going, what did I just do? And trying to figure out how to get back to what you started. It gets crazy after a while. I'm going to do a couple of things real quick. Let me go back to my share screen and desktop. And you can see my bridge right now. I photographed a all-star game for minor leagues a long time ago. The lighting at their games is not as good as Major League Baseball. So I'm going to open up these two files. You can see these two files I'm working with right now: pitcher, Danny Duffy, and then the field. So I'm going to hit OK. And with Camera Raw, what I can do, in fact, I'm going to go ahead and reset the defaults on this. So it's back. That's how it came out when I shot it. So there's a couple of things I can do. One, I can go to white balance and go to auto, and it gets me pretty dang close. In fact, I would probably stay with that because the skin color is good. Or what I could do is click on the grays on his uniform, which gets me a little bit greener tint. Click on the whites, which gets me more yellower tint. I happen to like the auto much better, so I'm going to go with that. And exposure, I'm going to bring it up just like 10%. I'm going to click on the other image, or I could hit Command or Control A to select all. And as you see, I hover over the image and it shows a couple of different icons. I'm going to click on the bottom icon right there, which is synchronizing. And what I want to do is synchronize everything as far as the images that I worry about. I'm going to do color, basic, curve. It's all the same because I didn't touch most of them. And then I'm just going to click OK. And you can see now Cancel. Don't do that. If I click on this image, the color balance is the same as that one. So it does the work for me. I'm going to click on open. I'm just going to open one file. But
This meeting is being recorded.
Thank you. Okay, what I'm going to do is go down to the bottom down here below all the images with all the star ratings and stuff, and click on where it says display P3 8-bit. Okay, I can change it to a 16-bit image. I can open it in Photoshop as a smart object. So let's go ahead and do that. And one more thing I can do is right click on him. Let's go into color balance. I don't want color balance. Okay, I'll right click on the display down here on the bottom left, and I'm going to click on enhance. What enhance does is goes to super resolution. It's going to make that image basically double in size. So now I'm going to make this thing a monster huge image, and it takes about 20 seconds for it to do it on my computer for this size image. And I wait and wait and wait and wait and wait. And it should show up here next to the images here saying, there it is. That's my supersize image. And I'm going to open that as a smart object. And it's going to take a little while because it is a rather large file, 275.9 megabytes. But the thing is, I can enlarge it all I want now. So,
what about the noise you got going there? Would you use Topaz for that, or would you not use Nix?
I will go with Topaz 99% of the time. So I'll go to Topaz Labs, denoise, and because this is such a huge file, it's going to take a very long time.
Okay.
And you have low light, you have clear, and you have severe noise. You test to see which one works the best. I think I like low light the best. Click apply. And it's going to take about 2 minutes to actually run this because I opened it up full size. So
Have you done a side-to-side comparison between AI sharpening and enhance?
we did that about 6 months ago. We did a couple of different, well, not AI sharpening and enhance. Enhance basically just doubles the size of the image. But I did detail, and then I did sharpening, and I used, I think it might have been a Nick filter to go with it for sharpening. And I definitely like Topaz, denoise, and sharpening the best. Those seems to work. They work best for me. Are they perfect? No. Do they work every single time? No. You just got to work with what you got and hope for the best. And if it doesn't work, you go to plan B.
Well, when you use enhance either from Camera Raw or Lightroom or Photoshop, it does sharpen it.
It does sharpen it slightly, but for the most part, it's just making the image bigger, doubling your pixels. It doesn't do a whole lot of sharpening.
Double the pixels so that you can print larger, correct?
Yes. And also for you to work on it too. But now you see, this is, let me zoom in so you can really see. Before and after using denoise.
Wow.
Does that answer your question, Anthony?
Yeah, that's great, because I'm getting ready to purchase some from Topaz. I know for sure at the Topaz I'm going to buy the sharpening tool, but I didn't know.
Sharpening is a annual fee for it, just to let you know.
Okay. Does
where
that come along with the denoise too at the same time, annual?
you can buy a bundle or you can get each one separately.
Okay,
Denoise, if you want to upgrade it, you have to pay for upgrades.
okay.
If I go to camera raw filter, and go to geometry, go to automatic, it should straighten the fence out for me. I did a fairly good job. A couple of different ways to straighten it. Go to the crop tool. I'm going to clear my crop. And then I'm going to go to straighten at the top up here. And then click along the top of the fence. You can see it's just a slight change. Now Topaz has to figure out what we did again, because we're using a, I'm going to cancel. I'm not going to do it. Because it is a smart object, camera raw or Topaz had to run again to make it work. So anyway, don't save. And the question comes up, why use camera raw, or why you shoot in raw? Well, let's do this. I think I've shown this image before, but get rid of the smart object. You can see here, it's a black image, very underexposed. I was shooting an event at a country club using studio lights outside, and a missile went off from Point Wanimi. So let's go ahead and hit auto on edit, and it takes the exposure all the way up. Bring the highlights up a little bit. Bring the whites, bring the blacks a little bit. Don't need a whole lot of saturation. But that's the image that was in the sky. And this is, well, I'll just hit reset down here. That was what it started out as, because I underexposed the heck out of it. Why shoot camera raw? So I can fix it. If I did that with a JPEG image straight out of camera, it would not work. So that's why you shoot raw. Okay, questions?
I think there's some confusion too about JPEG. If you take a JPEG image into Photoshop and then hit the camera raw filter, that does not turn it into a raw file.
It does not turn it into a raw file. It just does some of the basic editing that you can do with camera raw. It's not, if I entered, let me share screen again. Hang on 1 second. Share screen. If I open this image up, open, come on. There we go. Open in Photoshop. I didn't make any changes to it. So basically it's a JPEG image. Go to filter, camera raw filter. I'm going to drag the exposure up. It did manage to save me a little bit. So not as good, but pretty close to it. So it does, they've improved the camera raw filter, but if you work with the raw file, you got a lot more information to work with. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
If you overexpose an image, you might be able to bring it back, but most of the time, no, because when you blow out the highlights, I think I've got an image in here in bridge. There it is.
Phil,
Philip Abel. Bring my highlights. I'm going to slam them down. Bring my whites way down. And you can see that around this area of the face, it's totally blown out. There is no detail whatsoever in there. Even if I drag my exposure down to there, there's still no detail there. So it will save you a little bit, but it won't fix bad. You can't fix bad. So, okay, questions. Is there a local Twin Falls or surrounding Photoshop class recommended to start learning, not on YouTube? Well, I don't blame you for not wanting to watch the YouTube videos, because some of them are really, really bad. You can look at mine. I can tell you some of the people to follow on YouTube that I highly recommend. Number one is Julianne Cost. She's an Adobe evangelist. She knows what she's talking about when she does that. I'm going to be teaching a class April 15th in Meridian, if you're interested. You can send me your email and I'll send you information about it, since I don't want to advertise it here. There's also a class in San Diego at West Coast School, June 4th through the 9th. Photoshop basically 0 to 60 in a week, where you get a full week of putting up with me. And you actually have to pay to put up with me, so it's hard. It's a great program, westcoastschool.com. And then there's so many, you could sit and do a raw class for a week and still not cover everything. One of the things I like to do, I'll do one more thing in raw if I can find the files that I want. Dust spots. Let's go up to this one. Close the chat window.
that looks like Newport Beach.
That would be actually Pismo Beach.
That Pismo?
Yeah. Let's go ahead and reset to default. Fix our sky real fast. Okay. I set it to default because you can see there's a few dust spots on my sensor. Like, I can't even count that high, how many dust spots there are. That was when the camera was brand new, never took the lens off, and it just decided not to play. If you go over to the right, there's a healing brush, the healing tool, or you can hit B for shortcut. Click on the healing brush, and it says visualize spots down here. Click on that. And that shows you where the spots are at. And it has a healing brush, just like a regular brush. Use the bracket keys to make it bigger or smaller. And you just start clicking on your sensor spots. And it's running very slow right now. But you can see that they're taking them out one by one. And you can see where the spots are. If you have multiple spots that are close to each other, like these two here, you can just drag over, click, drag over both of those. So if you need to do that on your image, especially if you're entering print competition, make sure that you check your images before you send them in for dust spots, because more often than not, judges look for that the first thing out. So that's a really cool thing. And it's also in the Camera Raw filter. So you got that available to you as well. Any other questions? That was a fast hour. Okay, let me turn on.
Maybe a suggestion for a future one. Depending on how many people might think this might be interesting to them. You mentioned the color checker for white balance, and you know, you can actually create profiles for different lighting conditions and what have you, using the color checker and the software that you can get to come with it. I showed that as part of a class I did, or a program I did for SIPA on calibration, and a lot of people wanted to know, they'd heard about calibrating their camera, and basically that's what you're doing, but you can create a whole bunch of different profiles for different lighting conditions based, for using your specific camera. Pretty helpful for people that do a lot of studio photography with different lighting. So that's something you might want to look into.
And I didn't even touch on presets in Camera Raw, where you can go in and if you got a certain preset that you want to do for each image, select them all and do the preset, which is another class in itself as well. So there's all kinds of cool stuff you can do with this. And again, this is the same in Lightroom. It's the same monster that's running Camera Raw that's running Lightroom. So if you don't like bridge to Camera Raw, then you've got Lightroom and you can do it that way. So whatever flips your wig. I just happen to like bridge because I grew up with bridge. And when I tried going to Lightroom in the beginning, it was so clunky, and which is not today. It's very updated, but I just haven't crossed over the bridge again. I'm staying where I'm at. I'm an old fart that's stubborn and stays where I'm going.
Would you consider doing a class on bridge?
I could do another class on bridge, definitely. Yep. And if you look on YouTube, I've got about 150 videos that we've done over the last 3 years. And you can search mine and say, okay, I want to look up bridge, and there'll be a thing on bridge, filters, text tool, whatever you want we've done for. So any other questions?
I have a quick question for the whole group.
Okay.
I am looking for a calendar template, year at a glance with a photo on it. Anybody have any ideas? Because both the labs that I use had them and they are no longer available.
Matt Kloskowski has some that he gave away for free at the beginning of the year.
Anybody have one that I could, all I need is one. I have one of my students requested a calendar this year, and I didn't realize they had disappeared from both Millers and Bay. So
okay, I will see if I can find one and get it to you.
Anybody has one, I would appreciate it.
I will get it for you.
Thank you.
Well, a segue to that is I've been looking for an app that you can put a picture a day, and I used day one, and I'm not happy with that. Does anybody use anything else?
A picture a day is in a calendar?
No, just like
for Facebook or social media?
Well, not actually. You're actually making a calendar, so you want the template. I just want a place where I can put in one picture every day. And then
a long time ago, I used something, I thought it was Photo 365. Only did it for a year though, and then I didn't, that was enough. But you could try that. I think that's what it was called.
Okay, I'll look into that. Day one is really clunky.
I saw Kimberly shaking her head yes on Photo 365, so apparently that was the correct answer. So
Well, I did that with Suzanne for that same year. I remember.
okay.
I have a question. I've been saving my files, create everything and then save it as a TIFF file and everything. And every time I go ahead and flatten them to save them as a file and then change it into a JPEG so I can, have a small file to show. It jumps into it says it's a JPEG 2000. It doesn't give like a regular JPEG like it used to. Am I missing something on that or?
Okay, let's go ahead and share screen real quick. Photoshop. And you can see Photoshop right now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to go into my preferences, which is Command or Control K, or you can go Photoshop to preferences on a Mac, or I think it's edit to preferences. And then is it export? File handling. It's been a while. Okay. What you need to do is go to Preferences, File Handling, and right at the top in the middle, it says Enable Legacy Save As. Click on that, and that'll bring up all your saves that you're allowed to do.
Okay. Yeah, because it's restricting me on, it's like, it only shows me a JPEG 2000. I'm going, well, that
Yeah.
doesn't show me a whole
Click-
bunch, so
Click Enable Legacy Save As, and you'll be good to go.
great. Thank you so much.
Any other questions?
Oh, that was worth the price of admission.
Okay, we'll talk about that at West Coast School, by the way. I'll
Oh,
remind you
good.
about that there.
Are you gonna pass out your little cards again with all the cheat sheet shortcuts?
Of course,
Mine's gotta be
definitely.
that.
As it should be. You got to be using it. After a while, you should get them memorized, and keyboard shortcuts to save you a lot of time.
Yep, especially when it's on the floor and you roll over it about 4 times with your chair, you go like, well, that didn't work out.
I'll give you a second one then. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this.